My wedding planner slipped me a USB drive and whispered, "Watch this before you say I do." That was 6 hours ago. Now I'm sitting on my bathroom floor at 2 in the morning with my laptop balanced on my knees, and I can't stop throwing up. The video playing on the screen keeps looping in my head even when I close my eyes. My fiancé. My sister. The hotel room we'd rented for our engagement party. His hands tangled in her hair. Her moaning his name. I'm Margot Chen, 29 years old, kindergarten teacher, and 3 days away from what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life.
Supposed to be.
Past tense. Because everything I thought I knew just got ripped apart. The USB drive sits on the sink counter, this tiny piece of plastic that weighs nothing but somehow destroyed everything. I keep thinking about Diane's face when she pressed it into my palm during our final venue walkthrough this evening. Her hand shook. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "I'm so sorry," she'd whispered. "But you need to see this. Tonight. Before it's too late." I almost didn't watch it. Almost threw the whole thing in the trash and went to bed dreaming about white dresses and happily ever after. But something in her voice stopped me. Something desperate and urgent and terrified. So I waited until everyone was asleep, locked my bedroom door, opened my laptop, clicked the first video file. The timestamp said May 15th, 3 weeks after Carter proposed. 3 weeks after he'd gotten down on one knee at Harbor Point and promised to love me forever. I watched him kiss my sister against the hotel room wall, watched him tell her that I was just a means to an end, watched her laugh and say, "She's so trusting. This is almost too easy." My throat burns from stomach acid. My hands won't stop shaking. But there's more on this drive. More videos. Different dates. And then folders labeled bank records and property transfers and something called the plan. I click on the bank records first. My bank records. Transactions I never made. $50,000 moved 3 months ago. Another $30,000 last month. Money from the inheritance my grandmother left me. Money that was supposed to go toward our house. Our future.
Gone.
The property transfer documents show Carter's name. A condo in Miami. A car lease for a Mercedes I've never seen. All purchased with my money. My grandmother's money. The woman who raised me when my parents were too busy fighting to notice I existed. There's a knock on my bathroom door. "Margot? Baby, are you okay? I heard you getting sick." Carter's voice.
Sweet. Concerned.
The same voice that told me he loved me this morning. The same voice that's been lying to me for months. I stare at the laptop screen, at his face frozen in the video, at my sister's smile. "I'm fine," I call out, and I'm shocked by how steady my voice sounds. "Just something I ate. Go back to bed." "You sure? I can stay with you." The man in the video pulls my sister's shirt over her head. The man outside my door tells me he's worried about me. They're the same person, but my brain can't make sense of it. Can't reconcile the Carter I thought I knew with the stranger on this screen. I'm sure. "I'll be out in a minute." His footsteps fade down the hallway. I hear my bedroom door close. And then I'm alone again with the truth burning a hole through my chest. There's one more video file. This one is dated yesterday. 24 hours ago. I don't want to watch it. Every cell in my body is screaming at me to close the laptop and pretend none of this exists. But I can't stop now. Can't unknow what I already know. I click play. The video opens on my sister sitting in a coffee shop. She's on the phone. And when I hear who she's talking to, when I hear what they're planning for the wedding day itself, my blood turns to ice. Before you ask, yes, this gets worse. Way worse. If you're already hooked, hit that like button and subscribe because you're going to want to see how this ends. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Now, let me tell you how I got here. How I ended up engaged to a monster. 6 months ago, I thought I knew what love looked like. Carter James had been my junior high crush, the quiet boy who sat behind me in 8th grade algebra. Back then, he was skinny and awkward, always struggling with numbers while I breezed through equations. I tutored him after school, helped him pass, gave him confidence when everyone else called him stupid. Then he moved away freshman year and I never saw him again. Until March. He walked into Rosewood Elementary for career day, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Investment banker now. Successful. Confident. Completely different from the nervous kid I remembered. When he smiled at me across the hallway, something in my chest fluttered. After his presentation, he found me by my classroom. "Miss Chun," he said, pretending we were strangers. "Your students are lucky to have you." I played along. "Thank you, Mr. James. Carter James." Then he leaned in and whispered, "You don't remember me, do you, Margot?" The way he said my name triggered the memory. Oh my God. Carter? From Westfield Junior High. His grin widened. "You saved my life back then. Let me buy you coffee and tell you about it." Coffee turned into dinner.
Dinner turned into weekend dates.
By April, we were exclusive. He told me about his childhood, how poverty had crushed his parents, how my tutoring had been the first time anyone believed he could be more than his circumstances. He'd worked his way through college, got into finance, climbed the ladder at Preston and Moore Investment Group. Now he managed portfolios for millionaires. "You're the reason I made it," he said one night over wine. "You saw potential in me when I couldn't see it myself." My mom loved him. My dad approved. Even my sister Kelsey seemed excited when I told her about him, though looking back now, her excitement felt different.
Sharper.
Hungrier. The proposal came in September. Sunset at Harbor Point, orchestrated down to the last detail. He'd hired a photographer to capture the moment, a violinist to play our song. He even remembered the exact ring style I'd circled in a magazine when we were kids, joking about someday. "Margot Chun, you made me believe I was worth something. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you were right. Marry me." I said yes through happy tears. Strangers applauded. The ring sparkled on my finger. Everything was perfect. Almost. There was this moment at the engagement party. Small thing. Barely worth mentioning. Carter had stepped outside to take a call, and I followed him to ask if he wanted more champagne. I stopped when I heard his voice through the door, cold and sharp in a way I'd never heard before. "I told you to stop contacting me at events. Keep it separate. I'll handle my end." When he came back inside, his smile was back in place.
Warm.
"Easy." I asked about the call. "Just work drama," he said, kissing my forehead. "Nothing you need to worry your pretty head about."
Pretty head.
Like I was a child. But I ignored the sting, because I was happy. Because I was in love. Because questioning him felt like betraying him. That was my first mistake. Not my last. Diane Holloway entered our lives in October. Carter insisted we needed a professional planner because his firm had given him a bonus, and he wanted something impressive. His word, not mine. I would have been happy with a backyard ceremony and pizza, but he kept saying I deserved better. "Let me give you the wedding every little girl dreams about," he said. I never dreamed about weddings as a little girl. I dreamed about being a teacher, about helping kids like Carter used to be, but I didn't correct him. Diane came recommended by someone at his office. She arrived at our first meeting with a leather portfolio and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything. Mid-50s, silver hair, dressed simply but elegantly. No nonsense. Just competence wrapped in kindness. "Tell me your vision," she said, pen ready. Carter jumped in immediately. He wanted elegance, sophistication, a venue that would make an impression, imported flowers, a live band, an open bar with top-shelf liquor. He talked for 15 minutes straight while I sat there feeling smaller and smaller. Diane's eyes kept drifting to me, watching, waiting. "And Margot," she finally asked when Carter paused, "what matters to you?" I thought about it, that it feels real, that the people there actually care about us, not just showing up for free food and Instagram photos. Something flickered across Diane's face. Recognition, maybe, or sadness. "That's the most honest answer I've heard in years," she said softly. Over the next months, Diane became a constant presence. She was professional but warm. She remembered I was allergic to lilies. She noticed when I seemed stressed and would make me tea during planning sessions. She asked about my students, my family, my life beyond the wedding. Carter barely engaged with her. He'd show up to meetings, scroll through his phone, sign whatever needed approval, then leave for important calls. Diane would watch him go with this expression I couldn't read. "He's very busy," I'd say, making excuses. She'd reply, which wasn't agreement. Just acknowledgement. One afternoon in December, Carter didn't show up at all. "Emergency meeting," his text said. Diane and I sat in the venue's event room alone, surrounded by fabric samples and centerpiece options. "Can I ask you something?" Diane said suddenly. "And you can tell me it's none of my business."
Sure.
"Are you happy? I mean, really, truly happy?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" She looked at me for a long moment. "Because in all our meetings, you've never once talked about your life together after the wedding. You talk about the classroom, your students, your dreams for them. But when it comes to Carter, you talk about the wedding day itself. Never beyond it." My chest tightened. I just haven't thought that far ahead. Most brides can't stop thinking that far ahead.
I didn't know what to say.
The silence stretched between us, heavy with words neither of us spoke. Then Diane's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her whole body went rigid. The color drained from her face. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She stood abruptly, gathering her things. "I need to go. Family emergency. We'll reschedule." She was out the door before I could respond, leaving me alone with fabric samples and the uncomfortable feeling that she'd seen something in me I didn't want to admit. Something broken. January brought the first real crack I couldn't ignore. Carter had been staying late at the office more often, coming home after midnight smelling like scotch and expensive perfume. Not my perfume. Someone else's. "Client dinners," he'd explain, barely looking at me. "Part of the job." I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. The wedding was 4 months away. Invitations were ordered. Deposits were paid. My dress was being altered. You don't throw all that away over suspicious perfume, right? But then I found the receipt. It was in his suit pocket when I took his jacket to the dry cleaner. The Grandview Hotel. Room 847. Charged to his personal card, not his corporate one. The same night he'd told me he was at a client dinner across town. My hands shook as I photographed it with my phone. Evidence. But evidence of what? Maybe it was innocent. Maybe the dinner ran late and the client needed a room. Maybe Carter helped book it. Maybe. I didn't confront him. Instead, I started watching. Noticing. His phone was always face down now. He'd changed his passcode from our anniversary to something I didn't know. He took calls in the other room with the door closed. And worst of all, he'd stopped touching me. No random hugs. No goodnight kisses. Just this polite distance that felt like living with a roommate instead of a fiancé. My sister, Kelsey, noticed. "You look tired," she said when she came over to help address wedding invitations. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I lied. "Just stressed about work." She studied me with those sharp eyes we both inherited from our mother. "You tell me if something was wrong, right? With Carter?" "Of course." Another lie. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes.
"Good.
Because, you know I'm always here for you. Sisters before misters, remember? We'd said that as kids. Back when we were close. Before she'd moved to New York for her marketing job and started coming home only for holidays. Before she'd become this glossy, polished version of herself that I barely recognized. That night, Carter came home at 2 a.m. I pretended to be asleep. He showered for 20 minutes, which he never did after normal work days. When he finally crawled into bed, he stayed on his side. Miles of cold sheet between us. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and whispered to myself, "This is just wedding stress. It'll get better after." But I didn't believe it. The next morning, I found a text on my phone from Diane. "Can we meet today?" "Just you." "It's important." We met at a coffee shop across town. Diane looked like she hadn't slept. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair not quite as neat as usual. She ordered us both coffee and didn't touch hers. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And you're going to think I'm crazy. Or overstepping. Or both." "Okay. I have a daughter." had a daughter. Her voice cracked.
Emma.
She got married 5 years ago to a man who seemed perfect, charming, successful, treated her like a princess until the ring was on her finger. Then everything changed. My stomach dropped. Diane. He isolated her,
Controlled her money.
made her quit her job, and when she finally tried to leave, he put her in the hospital. Diane's hands trembled around her coffee cup. She died 6 months later. Car accident. But I know it wasn't an accident. I know he— She stopped,
Took a breath.
met my eyes. I see the same patterns in Carter, Margot. The control. The distance. The way he talks about you like your property, not a partner. I've been watching, and I'm worried. Really worried. I should have been angry. Should have defended him. Instead, I felt sick. Because part of me, the part I'd been shoving down for months, recognized the truth in her words. I don't know what you want me to say, I whispered. I want you to be careful. I want you to trust your instincts. She reached across the table and gripped my hand. And I want you to know that if you need help, if you need anything, I'm here. No judgment. Just support. I pulled my hand away. I appreciate your concern, but Carter isn't like that. He's just stressed about work. Diane nodded slowly. Okay.
But promise me something.
If you ever feel unsafe, call me.
Day or night.
Promise. I promise. I left that coffee shop feeling like I'd been stripped naked in public.
Exposed.
Vulnerable. Angry at Diane for seeing too much. Angrier at myself for letting her see it. But I didn't call off the wedding. Didn't even consider it. Because I was 29 years old, and everyone was so excited, and what would people think if I backed out now over a feeling? That was my second mistake. A bigger one than the first. 2 weeks later, my bank sent me a fraud alert. $50,000 had been transferred from my savings account to an account I didn't recognize. When I called them, frantic, they told me the transfer had been authorized with my password and security questions. But I hadn't authorized anything. Carter was at work. I called him 6 times. He didn't answer. Finally, he texted back. In a meeting. What's the emergency? I typed out what happened. He called immediately. That's weird, he said, but his voice was too calm. Too rehearsed. Probably a bank error. I'll help you sort it out tonight. Don't worry. Don't worry. Like $50,000 was nothing. Like my grandmother's inheritance hadn't just vanished into thin air. That night, he came home with flowers and apologies. He'd called the bank himself, he said. Filed a dispute. They were investigating. Everything would be fine. These things happen, he assured me, kissing my forehead. It's probably identity theft. We'll get it back. I wanted to believe him so badly, it physically hurt. So I did. I believed him because the alternative was too terrifying. The alternative meant everything I'd built my future on was a lie. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that Diane had stopped believing in coincidences. After her daughter Emma died, Diane had quit her high-end event planning job in Manhattan, moved to our small Connecticut town, started over with smaller weddings, private clients, background checks she ran on every groom that came through her door. She'd made it her mission to spot the warning signs, to save the daughters she couldn't save, to be the person who spoke up when everyone else stayed quiet. When she'd met Carter, something had pinged in her radar. Too charming, too polished. The way he answered questions about his past in vague terms. How he controlled every detail of the wedding but showed no real interest in Margot herself. So she'd started digging. It began innocently enough. A simple Google search. Carter James, Preston and More Investment Group. His LinkedIn looked legitimate. Professional photo. Impressive credentials. Recommendations from colleagues. But Diane had learned that profiles could be curated, manipulated, that people showed you what they wanted you to see. She went deeper. Called a friend at Preston and More under the guise of verifying vendor payments. The friend confirmed Carter worked there. Confirmed his position. But when Diane asked casual questions about his performance, his reputation, there was this pause. This hesitation. He's good at his job, the friend finally said. But between you and me, we've had some complaints. Nothing official. just whispers about aggressive tactics with clients, pressure to move money quickly. A few elderly clients who felt uncomfortable with his approach. Diane's stomach had turned. Emma's husband had worked in finance too, had used his access to drain Emma's accounts before isolating her completely. She started following Carter. Not every day, just occasionally. Enough to notice patterns. The way he'd leave work early, but tell Margot he was staying late. The Grandview hotel visits that matched the receipt she'd seen in his jacket pocket during a fitting when he'd draped it over a chair. She'd photographed him entering the hotel. Waited. Photographed him leaving 2 hours later with a woman who looked suspiciously like Margot's sister. Same build. Same hair color. But it was from a distance, grainy through a telephoto lens, and she couldn't be sure.
Not yet.
So she'd hired a private investigator. A retired cop named Marcus who owed her a favor from when she'd helped his daughter plan a last-minute wedding after a courthouse ceremony fell through. Marcus didn't ask questions. Just took the job and started watching. The evidence came back in February. Photos. Time-stamped. Crystal clear. Carter and Kelsey at the Grandview Hotel. Carter and Kelsey at a restaurant in the next town over. Carter and Kelsey in his car, parked in a secluded lot, fogging up the windows like teenagers. But Marcus had found more than just an affair. He'd traced financial records, used connections in banking to identify unusual activity. Money flowing from Margot's accounts into offshore holdings under Carter's control. Property purchases. Investments. All made with funds that should have been untouchable. This guy's running a long con, Marcus told Diane when he delivered the report. Classic romance fraud mixed with financial exploitation. The sisters in on it too. They're planning something big. What do you mean? Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her text message screenshots he'd intercepted through completely illegal but effective means. Messages between Carter and Kelsey discussing the wedding day payout. How they'd drain Margot's remaining accounts during the honeymoon. How Carter's life insurance policy on Margot would kick in after the marriage. How accidents happened to newlyweds all the time. Diane had nearly vomited reading those messages. You need to go to the police, Marcus said. And tell them what? That I illegally surveilled my client's fiancé? That I hacked private communications? It'll get thrown out, and it'll tip them off. Diane's mind raced.
No.
I need to give this to Margot in a way that protects her and makes sure there's evidence they can't destroy. She'd spent the next week compiling everything. Videos, bank records, screenshots, messages. Building an airtight case that even a terrified bride-to-be couldn't ignore. She'd organized it chronologically, added context notes, made it impossible to misunderstand. Then she'd loaded everything onto a USB drive and waited for the final venue walkthrough. The last chance to give Margot the truth before it was too late. When she'd pressed that drive into Margot's hand, her own hand shaking with fear and urgency, she'd seen Margot's confusion. Her resistance. The way her eyes said, "Please don't ruin this for me." But Diane had ruined it anyway. Because ruining a wedding was better than attending a funeral. Watch this alone tonight, she'd whispered, praying Margot would actually do it.
Please.
Or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. She'd left that venue not knowing if Margot would watch. Not knowing if she'd just destroyed an innocent relationship or saved a life. All she could do was wait. And hope. And pray that this time, someone would listen before it was too late. The next morning, Diane's phone rang at 6 a.m. Margot's number. When she answered, all she could hear was crying on the other end. Broken, desperate sobs that needed no words. I'm coming over, Diane said. Right now.
Don't do anything.
Don't talk to anyone. Just wait for me. Because now came the hardest part. Not exposing the truth, but figuring out what to do with it. Diane arrived at my apartment 40 minutes after I called her. I'd stopped crying by then, moved past tears into something colder. Something sharper. I opened the door still in my pajamas, eyes swollen, laptop open on the coffee table with the USB drive plugged in like a loaded gun. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. Not a polite hug. A real one. The kind my mom used to give me before she got too busy being disappointed in my life choices. I stood there stiff in her arms, and then something inside me cracked open, and I sobbed into her shoulder like a child. "I know," she whispered. "I know. I'm so sorry." When I finally pulled away, she handed me tissues and sat beside me on the couch. Her eyes went to the laptop screen, frozen on a frame of Carter and Kelsey in bed together, and her jaw tightened. "How long have you known?" I asked. My voice sounded dead, even to my own ears. "I had suspicions for months. Concrete proof for 3 weeks." She met my eyes. "I wanted to be absolutely certain before I destroyed your world. I needed to make sure I wasn't wrong." "But you're not wrong."
No.
She touched my hand gently. "I'm not wrong." I stared at the screen, at the betrayal frozen in pixels. They were planning to kill me. After the wedding. The text said accidents happen to newlyweds, that the life insurance would cover everything. Diane nodded slowly. "I saw those messages. That's when I knew I had to give you everything immediately. I was going to wait until after your bachelorette party this weekend, give you a few more days of happiness. But when I saw that conversation, I couldn't risk it." A hysterical laugh bubbled up my throat. "A few more days of happiness. Living a lie. Sometimes lies feel better than truth. Until they kill you." We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear my neighbor's dog barking. A car driving past. Normal sounds in a world that had stopped being normal the moment I pressed play on that first video. "What do I do?" I whispered. "The wedding is in 2 days. Everyone's coming. The venue is set. My dress is hanging in my closet. How do I just cancel everything?" Diane turned to face me fully. "Is that what you want to do? Cancel? What else would I do?" She pulled out her phone, opened her notes app, and showed me a list. A long, detailed list of options. Each one more elaborate than the last. "I've been thinking about this for weeks, Margot. Planning for every possibility. You have choices here. More than you think." I read through her list. Some options were simple. Call it off. Return the gifts. Apologize to guests. Disappear and start over. Other options were complicated. Dangerous even. But one option near the bottom made my heart start racing for a completely different reason. "This one," I said, pointing. "Number 7. Diane's eyes widened. "Are you sure? It's risky. It's public. There's no taking it back once you commit." I looked at the laptop screen again. At Carter's face. At my sister's smile. At the bank statements showing my grandmother's money being stolen. At the text messages planning my death like it was a business transaction. "I'm sure," I said. And I meant it. Diane squeezed my hand. "Then we have a lot of work to do in 48 hours. First thing first, you need to act completely normal."
Can you do that?
Pretend nothing's changed. Could I? Could I look Carter in the eye and smile? Could I hug my sister and not scream? Could I walk through the next 2 days like my heart wasn't a bomb waiting to explode? "I can do it," I said. "I have to." Because I wasn't just calling off a wedding anymore. I was planning something bigger. Something that would make sure Carter and Kelsey never saw it coming. Something that would expose them in front of everyone they'd ever lied to. Diane smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd seen too much darkness and learned to fight back.
Good.
"Because your wedding is still happening. Just not the way they planned." My phone buzzed. A text from Carter. "Morning, baby. Can't wait to marry you. 2 more days until forever." I stared at those words. Forever. He'd meant forever under his control. Forever as his victim. Forever until an accident made me disappear. I texted back. "Can't wait. I love you so much." The lies tasted like poison, but I swallowed them down. Because in 2 days at the altar, in front of everyone we knew, I was going to detonate the truth. And there would be nowhere for them to hide. Chapter 7. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. I smiled when I was supposed to smile, laughed when I was supposed to laugh, pretended to be nervous about the wedding in that normal, excited way brides are supposed to be nervous. All while my insides churned with rage and grief. Carter noticed nothing. He was too busy with last-minute details, too distracted by whatever he and Kelsey were planning for after the honeymoon. He kissed me goodbye each morning like I was already dead, like I was just a placeholder for the insurance payout. Kelsey came over the night before the wedding for our traditional sister sleepover. We'd done it before every major event since we were kids. Painted nails, watched movies, talked about life. Except this time, I knew every word out of her mouth was a performance. "I'm so happy for you," she said, painting my toenails champagne pink. "You deserve this, Margot. After everything you've been through, you deserve a happy ending." Everything I'd been through. She meant our childhood. The divorce. The times I'd protected her from our parents fighting. The college tuition I'd helped pay when scholarships fell through. The shoulder I'd offered every time she'd been hurt or scared or alone. And this was how she repaid me. By helping my fiancé plan my murder. "Thanks, I managed. That means a lot coming from you." She smiled up at me, and for a second, I saw the little sister I used to know. The one who'd crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who'd made me friendship bracelets and promised we'd be best friends forever. Where had that girl gone? When had she turned into this stranger wearing my sister's face? "I need to tell you something," Kelsey said suddenly. "And you can't get mad." My heart stopped. Did she know? Had Carter told her about the USB drive? Were they moving up their timeline? "What is it?" I kept my voice steady. "I've been seeing someone. It's new. Really new. But I think it might be serious." She bit her lip. "I didn't want to steal your thunder by mentioning it before the wedding, but I needed you to know. You're always the first person I tell everything to." The lies came so easily to her. So naturally. I wondered if she'd always been like this and I'd just been too trusting to see it. Too desperate for family to acknowledge the truth. "That's great, Kels. I'm happy for you." Another lie to match hers. "What's his name?" I'm not ready to say yet. It's still so fragile, you know? I don't want to jinx it. Fragile. Like my trust had been fragile. Like my heart had been fragile. Like everything she'd helped Carter destroy. We finished the manicure in silence. She fell asleep on my couch around midnight, but I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, going over the plan Diane and I had constructed. Every detail. Every contingency. Everything that could go wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Tech guy confirmed. Video will play on all screens at the venue. Audio is synced. You just need to get through the ceremony part, then give me the signal." I typed back. "What if I can't do it? What if I freeze?" Her response came immediately. "You won't freeze. You're stronger than you know. And I'll be right there with you." Morning came too fast. Kelsey woke up cheerful and excited, talking about how beautiful I was going to look, how perfect everything would be. She helped me into my wedding dress, the white silk that suddenly felt like a costume for a play I never auditioned for. "You look like a princess," she breathed, zipping up the back. "Carter's going to die when he sees you."
Die.
The word hung in the air between us. She didn't even realize what she'd said. My mom arrived with the hair stylist. My dad showed up with the photographer. Everyone was so happy. So oblivious. They had no idea they were about to witness an execution instead of a wedding. At the venue, Diane found me in the bridal suite. She was wearing a navy dress and carrying a clipboard, every inch the professional wedding planner. But when everyone else left the room, she grabbed both my hands. "Last chance to back out," she said. "We can still just cancel. Send everyone home. You don't owe anyone a performance." I thought about it. Really thought about it. The easy way out would be to run. To disappear. To let Carter and Kelsey think they'd won. But then they'd just do this to someone else. Another victim. Another woman who trusted the wrong people. "No," I said firmly. "We're doing this. They need to face what they've done." Diane nodded. "Okay, then let's make sure everyone knows exactly who they really are." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. At 3:45, I stood at the back of the venue, bouquet in hand, watching guests take their seats. Carter stood at the altar looking nervous and handsome in his tuxedo. Kelsey sat in the front row as my maid of honor, tissues ready for happy tears. The music started. Everyone stood. And I began walking down the aisle toward the man who wanted me dead, with my sister who'd helped him plan it, in front of everyone I'd ever loved. But they had no idea I was walking toward them with a detonator in my pocket. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, show some love. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe because you're going to want to see how this ends. And drop a comment telling me what you think Margot should do. Your support means everything. Now, let me tell you what happened when I reached that altar. I made it halfway down the aisle before my legs started shaking. Carter's smile was so perfect.
So practiced.
Like he'd rehearsed this moment in the mirror. Behind him, the venue screens that were supposed to show our love story slideshow sat dark and waiting. Diane stood near the tech booth, phone in hand, ready for my signal. I reached the altar. Carter took my hands. His were warm and steady. Mine were ice cold. The officiant began speaking about love and commitment and forever, words that should have meant something but felt hollow in my mouth. If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. Just the rustle of fabric as guests shifted in their seats. This was it. The moment where I could still back out. Still play the role of the devastated bride who simply couldn't go through with it.
Quick. Clean.
Private. But I'd never been good at keeping quiet when something was wrong. Actually, I said, turning to face the crowd. I object. Gasps rippled through the guests. Carter's hand tightened on mine. Margot, what are you? I object to marrying someone who's been stealing from me for 6 months. My voice carried across the room, clear and strong. I object to marrying someone who's planning to kill me for insurance money. And I object to pretending my sister isn't helping him do it. The room exploded, voices overlapping. My mother's shocked cry. Carter's angry denial. Kelsey standing up from her seat, face pale as paper. But I wasn't done yet. Diane, I called out. Show them. The screens flickered to life. All of them at once. The video started playing. Carter and Kelsey at the hotel. Their voices crystal clear through the sound system. Every kiss. Every plan. Every cruel word about how easy it was to manipulate me. Carter lunged for the tech booth, but my father and 3 of my uncles blocked his path. They'd been briefed by Diane earlier, told to watch for trouble. Carter was trapped at the altar, forced to watch his own betrayal play out on loop. Kelsey tried to run. Made it 5 steps before my mother caught her arm. You stay right there, Mom hissed. You watch what you've done. The video switched to the bank records. My grandmother's money disappearing. The property Carter had bought in Miami using funds he'd stolen. The life insurance policy he'd taken out on me 3 months ago with a $5 million payout. Then came the text messages. The ones discussing my accident on the honeymoon. How they'd make it look like I drowned while snorkeling. How they'd comfort each other through the grief before eventually falling in love and getting married themselves a year later. Someone in the crowd threw up. I didn't see who. I was too busy watching Carter's face as the mask finally crumbled. The charm disappeared. What was left underneath was cold. Empty. Predatory. You stupid bitch, he snarled. Not whispered. Snarled it loud enough for everyone to hear. You were supposed to be easy.
Trusting.
Too pathetic to question anything. This was supposed to work. It was working, I said calmly. Until someone cared enough to tell me the truth. He turned on Diane. You did this. You've been following me. Spying on me. That's illegal. None of this evidence will hold up. Diane smiled. Actually, everything was gathered through legal means. Private investigators. Security footage from public spaces. Bank records obtained through proper channels with Margot's authorization. I've been doing this long enough to know how to build a case that sticks. The sirens outside confirmed it. Police. Diane had called them the moment the ceremony started, timing their arrival perfectly. They entered the venue just as the final video finished playing. Marcus, the private investigator, explaining everything he'd found. The fraud. The conspiracy. The attempted murder plot. Carter ran. Tried to, anyway. Made it 3 steps before a detective tackled him to the ground. Kelsey collapsed in her seat, crying, trying to explain it away as a misunderstanding. But the evidence didn't lie. The videos didn't lie. The bank records didn't lie. I stood at the altar in my wedding dress, watching the man I'd loved get handcuffed and read his rights. Watching my sister get escorted out in her own set of cuffs. The guests were silent now.
Shocked.
Horrified. Some were crying. My mother found me in the chaos, pulled me into her arms, and held on like I might disappear. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I should have seen it. Should have questioned. Should have protected you better." "It's not your fault," I said. And I meant it. They were good at lying. Really good. Diane appeared beside us, her hand on my shoulder. "The police want a statement. Are you ready?" Was I ready? I'd just blown up my wedding, exposed my fiancé and sister as criminals, destroyed my family in front of 100 witnesses. But I was alive. I was free. I was standing on my own 2 feet instead of floating face down in Caribbean water. "I'm ready," I said, because the hard part was over. The confrontation, the exposure, the moment of truth that could have gone so many different ways. Now came the aftermath, the rebuilding, the long process of learning to trust again. But at least I'd have the chance to try. The police station smelled like bad coffee and desperation. I sat in an interview room for 3 hours, going through every detail with Detective Morrison, a woman in her 40s who'd apparently handled fraud cases for 15 years. She was patient, thorough, didn't judge me for not seeing the signs earlier. "You'd be surprised how common this is," she said when I apologized for being stupid. "Romance fraud mixed with financial exploitation. We see it more than people think. You're lucky you found out when you did." Lucky. That was one word for it. They charged Carter with fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and a dozen other crimes I couldn't keep straight. Kelsey got charged as an accomplice. Both were denied bail. Apparently, the text messages about my planned accident made them flight risks. Funny how that worked. My parents took me home that night, not to my apartment, which still had Carter's things scattered everywhere. Home. My childhood bedroom with a faded wallpaper and the bed I'd cried myself to sleep in during the divorce. They tucked me in like I was 9 years old again, and for once, I let them. I didn't cry.
Couldn't cry.
I was empty, hollowed out, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just a shell walking around pretending to be Margot. Diane called the next morning. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel numb, like none of this is real. It's shock. It'll fade, and then you'll feel everything at once, and it'll hurt worse than anything you've ever experienced. But you'll survive it. I promise you'll survive it." "How do you know?" "Because I survived it when Emma died. Because I've watched other women survive worse. Because survivors are stronger than we think." She paused. "Can I come over? Bring you some food?" She showed up an hour later with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. We ate in silence on my parents' porch, watching the neighborhood kids play basketball in the street. Normal life continuing like the world hadn't just ended. "The venue refunded everything," Diane said eventually. "The caterer, too. Most of the vendors are being understanding. You won't be financially destroyed by this on top of everything else." "That's something, I guess." "Your guests have been calling me, wanting to check on you. Make sure you're okay. You have a lot of people who care about you, Margot. Don't forget that." I picked at my pad thai. My sister tried to have me killed. How do I come back from that? How do I ever trust anyone again? You start small. You trust one person with one truth. Then another person with another truth. You build it back piece by piece. Diane set down her wine glass. "And you remember that most people aren't Carter and Kelsey. Most people are just trying to do their best. Make mistakes. Learn.
Grow."
"Did you trust anyone after Emma died?" "Eventually. It took time.
Therapy.
A lot of crying.
But yes.
I learned to trust again. Just more carefully. With better boundaries." Over the next few weeks, the story exploded. Local news picked it up first. Then regional. Then somehow it went viral on social media. Bride exposes murderous fiancé at altar became a headline I saw everywhere. My face was suddenly recognizable. Strangers stopped me in grocery stores to tell me I was brave, strong, an inspiration. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired, angry,
Betrayed.
but I smiled and thanked them because what else could I do? The trial was set for 6 months out. Carter's lawyer tried every trick to get the charges reduced, claimed the text messages were just dark humor, that the financial transfers were authorized, that I was a scorned woman making up stories. But the evidence was too solid, the paper trail too clear. Kelsey pleaded guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence, 8 years instead of 20. She wrote me a letter from jail that I never opened, burned it instead in my parents' fire pit, and watched the smoke rise like prayers I couldn't speak. My teaching job welcomed me back after I took a month off. The kids asked where Mr. Carter was. I told them he'd moved away, and we weren't friends anymore. They accepted this with the easy logic of 5-year-olds and moved on to asking if they could have extra recess. I wished I could move on that easily. For months after the wedding that wasn't, I was in my classroom after school when someone knocked on the door. A man in his 30s, well-dressed, holding flowers. My stomach dropped. Not again. Please, not again. Miss Jen. He smiled nervously. I'm David Mitchell. I was at your wedding. Well, the non-wedding. I just wanted to give you these and say thank you. Thank you for what? For being brave enough to expose the truth. My sister was engaged to someone similar. Controlling. Manipulative. I've been trying to convince her to leave him for months, but she wouldn't listen. Then she saw what you did, saw you stand up at that altar, and she called off her wedding. His eyes were shining. You saved her. I needed you to know that. He left the flowers and disappeared before I could respond. I sat there holding roses and crying for the first time since it all happened. Not sad tears, relief tears, grateful tears, because maybe, just maybe, something good had come from the worst day of my life. Diane called that evening. I have news. Carter took a plea deal. 25 years. He'll be eligible for parole in 15, but with his record, probably won't get it. 25 years. He'd be in his 50s when he got out. Old enough to have lived a whole life. Except he'd be living it in prison instead of spending my grandmother's money in Miami. Good, I said. And I meant it. 6 months after my wedding day, I stood in front of Diane's house holding a bottle of wine and a thank you card I'd rewritten 17 times. She opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been watching for me. Come in, she said warmly. I made dinner. Hope you like lasagna. Her house was cozy, filled with photos of Emma, a beautiful girl with Diane's eyes and a smile that could light up rooms. I studied the pictures while Diane finished cooking, seeing the progression from baby to teenager to young woman. Seeing the wedding photo, where Emma looked happy. Had no idea what was coming. She would have liked you, Diane said from the kitchen doorway.
Emma.
She wanted to be a teacher too. Before everything changed. I wish I could have met her. Me too. Diane wiped her eyes. But in a way, saving you felt like honoring her. Like maybe her story didn't end for nothing if it helped me recognize the patterns in time to help someone else. We ate dinner talking about everything except Carter and the trial and the aftermath. Diane told me about her childhood in Boston. Her late husband who died of cancer 10 years ago. Her love of gardening. Her dream of writing a book someday about recognizing abuse in relationships. You should write it, I said. You have experience. Knowledge. You could help people. Maybe. After I help you finish healing. I'm not your responsibility, Diane. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're not my responsibility. You're my friend. There's a difference. Friend. The word settled into my chest like warmth. I'd lost so many people in the past 6 months. Cut off friends who'd defended Carter. Distanced myself from family members who thought I'd overreacted. But I'd gained something too. Someone who saw me at my worst and didn't flinch. Who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Thank you, I whispered. For the USB drive. For caring. For for refusing to let me marry a monster. Thank you for being brave enough to watch it. A lot of people wouldn't have. They'd have thrown it away and convinced themselves everything was fine. Diane's eyes were serious. You saved yourself, Margot. I just handed you the tools. After dinner, she showed me Emma's room, still preserved exactly as it had been. Posters on the walls, books on the shelves, a life interrupted and frozen in time. It was beautiful and heartbreaking. I'm thinking about donating her things, Diane said quietly, to a women's shelter. Help other women who are leaving dangerous situations. Emma would have wanted that. That's a beautiful idea. Would you help me? When I'm ready. Of course. We stood there together in Emma's room, two women connected by tragedy and survival. I thought about the wedding that never happened, the life I'd almost lost, the future that was still unwritten. My phone buzzed. A text from my principal asking if I'd be interested in teaching the summer program for at-risk kids. Extra pay. More responsibility. A chance to make a difference. I texted back yes. Outside Diane's window, the sun was setting. Golden light spilling across the neighborhood. Kids riding bikes. Dogs barking. Life continuing in all its messy, complicated glory. And for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than numbness or rage. I felt hope. Carter was in prison. Kelsey was in prison. My grandmother's money was being recovered through the legal system. Slowly, bureaucratically, but recovering. The house in Miami had been seized. The car repossessed. Everything they'd stolen was being returned piece by piece. More importantly, I was free. Free to make my own choices. Free to trust or not trust. Free to build a life that belonged to me and nobody else. You're going to be okay, Diane said, reading my mind. It doesn't feel like it yet, but you will. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you're still fighting. Because you didn't let them win. She smiled. And because I've seen enough survivors to recognize one when I see her. I left Diane's house that evening with a full stomach and a lighter heart. Drove home through familiar streets in the town I'd grown up in. Past the elementary school where I taught. The park where Carter had proposed. The venue where I detonated my life and rebuilt it in the same breath. My apartment was quiet when I got home. Empty, but not lonely. I'd redecorated after Carter's things were removed. New paint. New furniture. New energy. This space was mine now. Completely mine. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not a story about what happened. A letter to myself. The version of me who'd been sitting in her bedroom 6 months ago, terrified and betrayed, wondering if life was worth living anymore. Dear past Margot, I wrote. You're going to survive this. I know you don't believe it yet. I know it feels like the end of everything. But it's not the end. It's the beginning of something better. Something real. Trust Diane. Trust your instincts. Trust that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing in disguise. Love. Future Margot. I printed it out and tucked it into Emma's thank you card. Tomorrow, I'd give it to Diane along with a donation to the women's shelter in Emma's name. Tonight, I'd sit here in my own space and remember that I was still breathing, still hoping, still here. The wedding planner had slipped me a USB drive and saved my life. But I'd made the choice to watch it, to act on it, to stand up when it would have been easier to stay silent. That was my power, my decision, my survival. And I was damn proud of it. Hey, we made it to the end. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you to trust your instincts or gave you strength to walk away from something toxic, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Share your story. Let me know you're out there. Your words matter. Your experiences matter. And I promise I'll read every single comment because we're all in this together, fighting to survive and thrive and become the people we're meant to be. Stay strong out there. And remember, sometimes the best thing you can say is, I object.